Hello everybody and welcome back to the latest episode of the RBL Podcast. It is of course myself, Fury, here today, and we are going to be talking a little bit about a couple of trades that happened just yesterday in the league, what the impact is, what that means for those teams, as well as diving into sort of the back half of the first round of the draft that is coming up. So stay tuned to hear about all of that and more. But let's begin with talking about the two trades that hit the RBL yesterday, which both involved the Kings and basically their direction of travel changing, and a couple of other teams that maybe are looking at playoffs, maybe looking at sort of rebuilding a little bit. But let's get ourselves talking about it. I mean, I think the first deal we have to jump to is a bit of a blockbuster trade if I've ever seen one. And that was, of course, the Kings deciding that Otis Birdsong is no longer going to be in town. He is heading over to the Indiana Pacers, along with a first round pick that they had from Portland in 1979, in exchange for the Pacers 1979 pick. So Otis Birdsong is now officially an Indiana Pacer. And well, I mean, we need to talk about it from the Kings side to begin with, I think. Obviously, they are losing a very, very good young player in Otis Birdsong. He is probably one of the better sort of young shooting guards that are coming through. You know, his numbers are looking really, really strong, given that he is still only a rookie. Let's not forget that. His shooting numbers are looking pretty good this year. 43%. His actual efficiency has been pretty solid. True shooting 46%. And his PR is 16.9. So he's already proving, even in his first year, that he can be a productive player. Obviously, the Kings have not been a particularly good team this year so far. They are very much looking into the draft and rebuilding now. But Otis Birdsong, really good player to kind of lose. Obviously, they've packaged it with what is a Portland Trailblazers pick. And given where the Trailblazers currently sit in terms of the standings, it's probably going to be a low first round pick. So essentially, Otis Birdsong and a low first round pick heading to the Pacers in exchange for a Pacers pick. The Pacers are obviously 17 and 29. The pick that they are receiving is obviously a 79 pick from the Pacers. And well, I think it's fair to say this is a really interesting one to try and break down. From the Kings' perspective, you're obviously giving up a very good player, what could probably be a low pick, in exchange to hopefully get another lottery ticket for the draft in 79, which, as we all know, is going to be the draft that Magic Johnson and Larry Bird come into it. So, the Kings are very much looking at probably rebuilding, seeing if they can get that star-studded player, all-star, Hall of Fame type player that's going to come in that draft. Really huge gamble from their perspective, in my opinion. Otis Birdsong is a good player. He's young. He's a guy you could probably start to build around. He's not necessarily probably the franchise player that you would want, but I think it is a big gamble, and it's really going to come down to what do we think about the Pacers? Do we think that with adding Otis Birdsong, they are going to jump up in terms of their standings for next year? Do we think they're going to be in that playoff hunt? And as we know, the Western Conference is a complete bloodbath. It is one of the most competitive conferences I've probably ever seen in terms of a multiplayer league. So really tough ask. That's where the Kings are looking. That rebuild is not looking at year one, not looking at year two, probably looking even beyond year three. Year 3 and 4 is, I think, when the Kings are kind of building out that projection now. And we'll talk about their other trade that they completed in a moment. So we'll come back to the Kings and talk about that perspective. But the Pacers, as I said, they have added Otis Birdsong. This is a player that was really kind of a good opportunity buy for them, in my opinion. They're 17 and 29. The roster is full of a mixture of sort of aging players. They've got some interesting young players that we need to talk about. I mean, Eddie Jordan is a really interesting prospect. Pairing him with Birdsong in the backcourt could be a really nice defensive, efficient backcourt in the future. Both of them are rookies. They're both developed together. I really like that combination. They also have the likes of Alan Bristow, who can sort of support them and guide them as they go along. And obviously they've got Dantley. So that three trio of Jordan, Birdsong, Dantley is a really nice young core to build around. And that projection in terms of what I think that's going to do, I think that probably that three, if they, I think the front court is subject to possibly being changed, but Len Elmer's not exactly the worst centre. You've got the likes of Bantam. Again, he's not the worst power forward. I mean, they're solid guys. They're not exactly going to be pushed around a lot. There's probably a bit of depth issue they'll need to address with the front court. I know Dave Robish has sort of been discussed in trades and all sorts, so he's probably not going to be there much longer. So it kind of leaves them, I think they're a bit short on in terms of the front court. They probably are looking for another sort of real good building block there. But I really like that. And then obviously the other question that we have with the Pacers is Ricky Sobers probably goes into a 6-man role, which is really interesting. He's going to be a really, really good 6-man if that's what ends up with him. I think the Pacers are going to be really interesting. The question we need to ask ourselves is, do we think that the Pacers, given where they are, which they're not really in the playoff hunt, they are kind of 5-6 games back now at this stage for this season. I don't think they're going to get there this year, so they're probably going to get themselves another solid player this year, and we'll talk about the draft a bit later, but we've already talked about sort of the top 10, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the mid-packs. So they're probably looking at sort of that 8 to sort of 16 range is kind of where a pick might end up there. But yeah, I think if they had that plus what they've got, there's an argument to say the Pacers could be a playoff team next year. I mean, who knows what's going to happen to some of these teams above them. Some of them are aging. Some of them have obviously got some big decisions to make with contracts and players in the off-season. I mean, it's not outside the realm of possibility that the Pacers could end up being a mid-tier pick next year, which, when we think about it from that perspective, it's a really, really tough ask for the Kings. I don't necessarily see the Pacers being a bottom 5 pick and being in that lottery hunt. So, yeah, I really like it for the Pacers. I think they've added a really, really good young prospect who they probably couldn't afford to pass up, and I don't think they're going to be in the draft range of trying to get a Larry Bird or a Magic Johnson at this stage. But that is the joy of trading draft picks. Who knows? They could come out next year and they could be a lot lower projection than what I have here, and we could be talking about the Kings making an absolute masterstroke. But it is a really high risk, high gamble for the Kings, in my opinion. And it was followed up pretty much immediately by another trade they completed. And this one was a bit more of a straightforward one, I think. Scott Wedman has moved on to the Hawks. He's been traded. They have also acquired another pick in 79 from the Hawks in exchange for him. So in terms of the Kings, they're obviously losing a lot of talent here. So I think it's fair to say that they're probably going to be down the bottom 5 next year. And I think that's the projection they're trying to take, is they're trying to rebuild and retool this team. As I said earlier, it's probably going to be a 3 or 4 year plan, I think, before we start seeing them in the playoff contention. Just given that they are going bottom and out, basically. They're essentially trying to top out of the bottom, and hopefully they get that massive leap with some of the talent that possibly they could be acquiring in 79. Huge gamble, in my opinion. But, given they're 11 and 33, this team is not structured to win at the moment. They are clearly indicating that it needs a rebuild. So, I mean, I think there's probably, when we look at this team in sort of next year in the off-season, I think a lot of this personnel will have been shifted and moved around. I think Mark Landsberg is an interesting one. I think he could stay. I quite think he could be a solid sort of backup rotation player for what their projected sort of timeline is now. But we need to start talking probably about likes of Tom Owens, who I can't necessarily see staying around. I think there'll be buyers for him certainly in the off-season, I think. And Tom Burleson, who's a solid sort of defensive rebounding type of centre. He's obviously got some decent height as well. So, options there, I think. I think that's where I kind of see it with the Kings. I think it's a real high risk move. I think it's bold. I think if we sit here end of next off season and they've managed to get themselves a Larry Bird or Magic Johnson and got cap room, who knows what could happen. But I think we'll probably have to say with them, high risk. We'll come back in about 5 years' time to this roster and we'll see where they are. It's going to be really fascinating to see. And but on the Hawks side, I really like this move for the Hawks. We kind of talked about them at the beginning of the season. They had that electric start at the beginning. They kind of bottomed out a little bit now. Their road form has been a bit patchy. And, they've been scraping around to really try and see what they can add to this roster to really get themselves back into the hunt in terms of the playoffs and hopefully try and take the division is where they want to get to. Not surprising that Wedman will come in. I don't think he's necessarily going to come in and start. I mean, the rotation of Eddie Johnson, Earl Monroe and John Drew is working pretty effectively in the backcourt. I think where he's going to fit is he's going to fit in terms of a 6-man style role for them. And I think that's going to be fascinating to see. He's obviously a very, very talented player. His shooting is really, really solid. He's struggled a little bit with his form this year, very fair to say. But his true shooting percentage still is pretty solid. He's a good rebounder. He can pass handle. He can defend. He can kind of do a bit of everything. And given he's 6'7", I kind of will see him sort of probably slotting in small ball lineups at the 4, in at the 3 at small forward, and you could probably even throw him in at the shooting guard position when needed. So I really like this move for the Hawks. I think that probably will hopefully get them closer to the likes of the Jazz and the Rockets in their division. And we could be sitting here saying that this will be the move that puts them into playoff contention. And, giving up the first round pick in 79, given that the Hawks have this man here, Mr. John Drew, who is absolutely insane. I can't see this team dropping out of being a playoff team in the future. So, essentially giving up a low first round pick, take Wedman in, help get him into the playoffs this year. And obviously, Wedman is not exactly old. He is only, he's only 25, so he's got lots of room to grow. Plenty of opportunity there for him to sort of build with this Hawks team going forward. So yeah, I like the deal for the Hawks. We talked about the Kings being a bold move, and I like the deal for the Pacers. So I don't think there's necessarily a real massive loss from anyone in these trades. Just some really, really interesting ones. Going to obviously be interesting how it comes back and see if the Hawks make it into the playoff contention. Does this bump the Pacers for next year and move them away from being a lottery team to maybe being a playoff team? We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, fantastic trades we've kind of seen, and I'm really, really interested to see what happens as we move towards the All-Star break and as we get nearest the trade deadline. Who knows what's going to happen at that stage? We could see some more trades and transactions come in and be at play. There's certainly a market now for people to kind of move now that status has kind of moved. People kind of know that whether they're in the playoff hunt or they're not at this stage. So we'll certainly see how that moves forward. But let's move ourselves past this season and talk a little bit about the draft again. So for those of you who've watched the previous episodes, you will know that we kind of talked all the way down to Wayne Cooper. We talked about sort of the top 10 or so. But I think it's worth us going back, and we're going to just dive through all the remaining first rounds. So we're going to talk all the way down to sort of pick 22 here with the Lakers. And we'll come back to a future episode probably and talk about the second round and any interesting players in there. But for anyone who's watching who hasn't watched that first one, go back and watch that top 10. It was interesting to see what it looked like. But let's turn our eyes over to sort of the remaining end of this first round of the draft. And just to remind everyone, this is the scouting from my New York Knicks team. It may look slightly different for you. The projected order might look different. But I'm just going to use this. And as I've said to everyone previously, all of the ratings are going to be exported and displayed and shared with everyone. So don't panic. We all kind of know that, we all want to see the ratings. And you can go into the game and see it, because we're just using the draft setup in game. But let's start with Freeman Williams. Freeman Williams is projected to be the number 10 pick at the moment, and this is a really interesting prospect. Obviously, he's currently projected to probably be a starter level and possibly an all-star type player. And well, what do I think of him? He's clearly a guy at the moment who can come in and give scoring straight away. His jump shot looks pretty solid. His inside shot looks okay. He's clearly a terrible passer, handler, and can't rebound to save his life. His athleticism is okay. It's not the best we've seen from the shooting guards, above him in sort of the top 10 or so. But, he's got room to grow. He's got room to grow in terms of his scoring. His defense clearly has a lot of room to grow. At the moment, it's probably average. I think in terms of where he come in, he's the sort of player who could probably come in and probably put up 15, 18 points per night on efficient numbers. The question will be with him is whether he can develop this defense. If he can get this defense up to sort of being a really, really good defender, then he has a room in this league, I think. He's very isolated in terms of, I think, what position he's going to play. Given he's 6'4", he might be able to play a bit of small forward, but you're kind of really gambling there because he can't rebound, and he's not got necessarily the passing and handling to play point guard either. So he's kind of going to be limited in terms of, I think, probably playing shooting guard at this level, despite him being listed as a point guard at the moment. But I could see him being an all-star. There's nothing to suggest he can't come in and develop and probably put up 20 points plus a game going forward. I think the shooting numbers are kind of there. But, there's still, I think he's probably going to come in. And I think realistically, in a team that is a playoff team, I think he's probably a 6-man style player at the moment. And that's where I kind of see him panning out at the minute. But let's move our attention over to sort of pick number 11. This is Mike Mitchell. So he is a small forward at the moment. He's obviously pretty much a good all-round small forward, I would probably say. His shooting numbers are probably just as good as Freeman's, so he's going to come in and give you a bit of efficient scoring. His passing and handling is okay. I think probably passing is a little bit lower than you would probably ideally like. But his defensive and offensive rebounding is really, really solid. He's already going to be solid for his role. Again, his defense is probably on the lower side, and his athleticism ability is okay. So it's pretty average across the board. He's obviously projected like Freeman Williams at the moment to be a starter / all-star type player. I don't necessarily know if he'll become an all-star type player, but similar to Freeman Williams, I think he'll have to put up numbers to kind of get there, and on the scoring side for him to kind of be considered as an all-star in the future. But I think he's the sort of player who could come in and be a starter. Just given that he's 6'7", he could be thrown in at the power forward spot. He could be thrown in at the small forward position. His defense is kind of okay. Post defense is probably better, so he's probably going to get more chance at the sort of forward positions in sort of the front court than he is in small forward at the moment. But I think he's maybe one of these classic sort of tweeners at this era. He's got a bit of everything. He doesn't have the huge amount of room to grow. I think that's the thing that's going to limit him. He can probably develop his rebounding and his passing and his handling and so on. But apart from that, you're kind of getting what you see with him. So I think realistically, he's probably going to pan out as being probably a starter / rotation type player in the future. Let's move on to Dave Corzin. So Dave Corzin is a really, really interesting prospect. And I think we maybe talked about him a little bit previously, given I think the projections maybe have changed slightly since our last conversation. But, I think we mentioned last time that he could come in and could be a starter pretty much straight away. He's not going to be the scorer. He's going to be a guy who just does a bit of defense, does a bit of rebounding for you, and he's got room to grow. So I won't linger too much with him at the moment. I think we probably have talked about him a little bit previously. Let's move our attention over to Ron Brewer. So Ron Brewer is projected to be 13th number pick at the moment. I think his shooting ability looks pretty solid. Clearly, the thing that's going to let him down is, again, similar to Freeman Williams, he is not a point guard. He can't pass, he can't handle. His his rebounding in general is pretty atrocious anyway. He's a good defender though, so I think he's probably going to be the type of player who'll come in and play shooting guard and be a defensive shooting guard who can maybe take a shot or two. He's obviously projected at the moment to be sort of a rotation type player / starter. I think realistically he's going to be a rotation piece on a good team. You're not going to trust him with the ball at point guard, and there are better shooting guards available in the league already. So I kind of see him kind of lingering there, I think. Let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about Billy McKinley. So another point guard, but a completely different type of point guard here. Clearly not as good a scorer as the likes of Ron Brewer previously. He does have some better ability as a point guard though. He is only 6 foot. So he's a slightly sort of undersized here. But he's got passing and handling ability is okay at the moment. He's probably almost as, in terms of room to growth, as good as Maurice Cheeks, who's projected to be sort of a top 5, top 6 player in this draft. His defensive game is really, really good. So I think he is the sort of player that could come in and probably start for some teams. And his current gap here from being a rotation piece to a starter is probably accurate, I think, given that he's certainly looking like a player that I think a team could probably throw in and start at point guard. He's not going to necessarily be the all-star type player, and that's clearly not where he's expected to be. He's got good quickness. His jumping ability is okay. So I quite like Billy McKinley actually. I'm surprised he is ranked on my draft list lower than Ron Brewer, to be honest with you. But let's keep moving on. Cleveland Johnson is next at pick 15. So Cleveland Johnson is listed here as a 6'10" power forward, so he's actually one of the decent sized power forwards in this era. His not shooting ability is pretty atrocious, although he's not really a massive scorer in terms of where we think he's going to be. His actual shooting percentages look okay, so if he can maintain that but not take many shots, I think most teams will be happy with that. But he's got some really nice room to grow. He's got some good handling ability to grow into. The rebounding ability could become really, really solid. And likewise, his defense. So he's an interesting prospect because he could comfortably become a rotation piece, just given his size, given the things that he will bring. Hopefully, if he develops, I think ideally I'd want that blocking to be a little bit higher if I was really looking at it, and maybe that inside scoring to kind of be slightly higher. But if he had those, I think we'd be looking at maybe like a top 10 pick. So Yeah, I like Cleveland Johnson. I think he's an interesting prospect, and I'm surprised he's drafted so low. It's projected to be drafted so low. And again, we've got back-to-back sort of power forwards here. So we've got Jerome Whitehead, who is again a very different player, despite being 6'10" as well. He clearly has no scoring ability at all. His inside shot is pretty below average. He has no jump shot, so you're pretty much going to be looking at putbacks, post-up game. That's pretty much where he is going to exist. Don't expect him to do anything else. So anyone who's running a fast-paced offense, don't look at this guy, basically. His passing and handling is terrible at the moment, but there's room to grow. Rebound ability is good, and there is room to grow to be a very good rebounder. And likewise, his defense is okay, and it's probably going to stay okay for the length of his career. Jerome Whitehead is a big gamble. I think there's a lot of room to grow for him. I think if he comes in like that, he's going to definitely just be a rotation player, a guy who's going to come in, just rebound, play okay defense, and you're kind of not going to expect much more. If he can reach some of these potentials that are listed here, we could be looking at a starter, but that's a big if, I think, in particular for him. Let's move on. Jeff Judkins, so a shooting guard, a nice size shooting guard, actually at 6'6". From College of Utah. So I think looking at this, he's pretty much mainly developed. His scoring ability, shooting ability looks okay. His jump shot's pretty good, so that's going to certainly help him at the next level. Again, another guy who's playing a guard position who can't pass, can't handle, can't rebound. So despite being 6'6", I would definitely not want to throw him at small forward. But his defense is good. So do I think he has the ability to become a starter? On a poor team, probably. On a good team, no. I think this is a guy you really, on a good team, you're probably wanting to throw like 15 to sort of 18 minutes at and hope that he just plays a bit of defense and he scores and hits a jump shot when needed. But yeah, it's a shame because he's got good size. If he had a bit of rebounding ability, then we'd probably be talking about a really good prospect here. We move on to Roger. I have no idea how to say that. Felgley. Let's just go with that. Shooting guard. It's interesting with the way the drafting projections work. We almost have back-to-back similar sort of players to compare here. But yeah, he's 6'7" as well. Again, similar to Judkins, he's not got rebounding ability, can't pass, can't handle. His defense is pretty atrocious. His shooting's okay, similar to Judkins. I think he is like a poor man Judkins, so no surprise that he's expected to be lower. Similar thing, I think. He is going to be a guy, I think, going to be a rotation piece if he's lucky. I think even he could possibly find himself out of the league in the future. Shame because he's got good size again. Let's keep on moving here. So we've got George Johnson, a small forward, 6'7". Okay, so this guy actually looks like a small forward, which is good to see. His actual shooting ability is okay. It's not the greatest. Passing handling is obviously terrible, so you don't expect to play him probably at the shooting guard position, I think. But his rebounding is really good. He's a really good rebounder, so he could play probably power forward, small forward. His defense game is okay at both. He can steal and block as well, and his athleticism stuff is okay. I think he's a good prospect, actually. I could see him probably starting for a team, particularly a team that likes to play a bit of small ball. And playing him at the 4 could be an interesting mismatch for teams. Yeah, I quite like him. Again, surprised he's not higher on the list. And there's some of the others that we've looked at. Terry Tyler, again, another small forward, 6'7", similar prospect here. He's pretty much mostly developed. He's got some really good room to grow in terms of offensive and rebounding ability. But yes, I guess similar type of player. Again, I think he could probably be a starter in this league. I have no idea why we've got a different picture for Terry Tyler that is clearly not him. But let's move that aside. His numbers in college look pretty good. 19-13, 3 assists. Yeah, 2 blocks. He looks like a really good prospect, actually. I'd quite like him in a rotation. Playing a 3-4, probably like 20 minutes or so a game. Yeah, he looks solid, actually. I quite like him. Rick Roby, a power forward. So he's clearly a 6'11" power forward. His size is obviously good. His shooting ability is okay. Rebounding ability is good for his size, so he's going to get you rebounds. Again, his defense is pretty lacking, and there's not much room to grow there. But he's got some nice athleticism skills. He is clearly, looks like he could. Again, he looks like a rotation piece. I think there's no denying that. He's, averaging double-doubles in college. I don't think he'll do that in the pro game. I think his defense is going to be a thing that's going to let him down from moving from a rotation piece to a starter, though. So I think on a good team, he's probably a guy you can throw like maybe 8 to 10 minutes at and just hope he rebounds a little bit. Is kind of where I see him. Let's keep on moving and talk a little bit about the last pick in the first round, which is Lars Hansen. So My goodness me, this is an interesting prospect. So he's actually not a bad defender and rebounder. He's okay. He's clearly not a good shooter in terms of he's not going to be a scorer for you. Again, his athleticism looks okay. I mean, look, we're looking at basically Lars Hansen or Rick Roby. I think I'd have Rick Roby over Lars Hansen, I think, just because there's a bit more interesting sort of stuff to kind of play with there. But I think similar sort of thing. He's going to be an 8 to 10 minute guy in the Pro League. I can't see him doing much beyond that. Again, it's because his defense is letting him down there, I think. So yeah, I mean, interesting that actually some of the front court players we're talking about in this first round I clearly have some good size, and I think that'll be interesting how that plays out in the league, whether that is really an important factor, because obviously a lot of the guys we're talking about in sort of front court, we're seeing them 6'9", 6'7" at the minute, so some size coming into the league definitely. I think looking at this first round, when we talked about it previously, the top 10 looks pretty solid. There's some interesting sort of high wing guys there. I quite like some of these guys in this mid first round actually. I think some of them could end up being decent prospects in this league. So yeah, I think overall so far the first round, I think it's a pretty solid first round. There's some really decent players in there that are going to really help some teams. And I don't think it's as shallow as I thought it would be, given that Larry Bird's not in here; he's in next year. I think it's not a bad first draft actually for the league in terms of this first round so far. But yeah, what do you guys think? I'm always interested in your opinions. Let me know. Is there anyone that you really like out of the first round or out of the second round that you want me to call out? Of course, we'll go through probably next time and talk a little bit about the second round and guys that I kind of like there. I don't think I'm going to do a full read across as to what the second round looks like at the minute. I'll just try and call out some interesting players I think there going forward. But yeah, obviously we've had some blockbuster trades already, and we haven't even hit the All-Star period yet or the trade deadline. I'm sure we'll see more of that to come in the future. And of course, we'll be back to talk about the second round of the draft and any other interesting topics, things that come up in the league as we move forward. But yeah, after this week's games on Sunday, we've got the All-Star break. We'll be back probably to talk a little bit about that as well. Good, best of luck to everyone in terms of hoping your guy turns up at the All-Star game, whether that's in the All-Star East versus West or the rookie game or the three-point shooting and the slam dunk contest. I personally be very interested to see who gets selected there. But yeah, we'll come back next time. We'll talk draft, we'll talk trade, and we'll talk all kinds of news RBL.